2, our market and government has not fixed those problems or made big dents in fixing those problems in the last 30 years. And 3, people no longer see themselves as owners of the forces that govern their lives. When sincere care is not resulting in change, we retreat towards irony and sarcasm, clicktivism, Facebook like button-tivism, sharing YouTube videos of Republicans saying stupid things and feeling happy about ourselves-tivism, and away from real activism. We are in a rut. We are starting to believe that we cannot do great things as a people anymore, that we cannot solve our problems together. America, this country, America, has figured everything out before, overcome the lot, tinkered, invented, and struggled, and Nazi fought our way through everything. And now we're stuck. We wonder whether America, the country that has always been being born, is for the first time over the hill and tired. The romantic spirit inside of us all, the spirit in us that wants to live a big, epic, universe-disturbing life, flows to the areas of the world that welcome it. And when the public sphere is unwelcoming to that spirit, when the public sphere moves too slow, when it paralyzes action by deconstructing it, when it dilutes creative efforts by forcing those creative ideas to be strung through committees and bureaucracies committed to risk aversion and distracted by ego-based and procedure-based as opposed to mission-based commitments. How many of you have been part of organizations that started by distributing titles to everyone and hierarchies before thinking about their mission? Indeed, when the public sphere, when the government is unwelcoming, then where will our romantic big life aspirations flow? They will flow to where they are welcomed, the private world. So we channel our romantic spirit, our dreams to live big, unique lives, only into private interpersonal relations, into our fervent opinions on things in the media, into consumption and security, leaving no aspirations left for the public world, deadening the public world further, leaving us more hopeless and even more fleeing from the great challenges of our time. And finally, on top of all this, the people who do want to flex their romantic impulse in the public, who want to change the world, they are stuck born into complicated and different times than their civic heroes of old. Whereas our heroes knew their adversaries, ours aren't in a single form. Whereas our heroes fought clearer visual problems, ours are invisible. Whereas they had a sense of what their solutions might just look like, what the world would look like if they succeed, we have little to no clue of what that looks like. In the confusion about the content of the solutions to our great problems, we latch on to not the content of the solutions, but the forms of activism. So we think, oh, to be an activist means to be like the activists before, so let me just start marching, let me just start rallying, let me just go to a protest quickly. We need dramatic direct action now, but the works of civil rights, of women's rights, of getting troops pulled out of Vietnam is not necessarily going to be the same type of work to solve global warming, fix our food system, raise neighborhoods out of poverty, and to have equitable schools. What do we act against? Where do we march? The question is less, would I get on the bus for our generation, and more, which bus should I get on? Damn it, all the buses are telling me they're the right bus. The buses are all going in different directions. Is this bus doing more harm than good? Is this bus carbon neutral? So we're in a rut, and we're confused, and we don't know where to begin. And it seems like all of our forms of democratic expression that we're taught in school that are supposed to fix these problems, voting, deliberating, joining a committee, lobbying, rallying, are not achieving the ends we want them to. So here I would like to share with you a new way to think about our role as citizens. I call it civic creativity. I turn to a different era than we usually turn to for inspiration. Who here has ever been inspired by the 1880s through 1920s? Here we go. Our late 1800s friends had seen, listen carefully now, our turn of the century friends in the late 1800s had seen a great war in the 1860s. They had experienced a post-war era of racial movements. They saw the rise of new industries, and with them a winner-take-all free market ideology. These late 1800s witnessed a technological boom, and with it the transformation of American life from small isolated communities to a larger economic realm. They survived sprawling urbanization too, a widening gap between the rich and poor, massive waves of immigration, and debates if those immigrants were terrorists, and debates if those immigrants were American enough. Our late 1800s friends had new technology to connect them to each other, and they debated whether it was good for society. and wondered if it and their newly reformulated mass culture had turned themselves into spectators, had masked their dislocation, their crumbling institutions, their inadequate schools, their impending economic recessions, their politics corrupted by the grip of money. Does this sound familiar? Even more, the President William McKinley, with his devious political leader, Mark Hanna, had tricked them into the Spanish-American War by saying the Spanish had sunk the USS Maine. But we all know they did not sink the USS Maine. And then after that, there's hope in a young, vibrant Teddy Roosevelt. Is he the one? Is he the one to raise us up from a new generation? Indeed. The turn of the 20th century and the era we live in today share many similarities. The concentration of wealth and power, challenging the values of our democracy, community institutions in decline, the middle class torn between the seductive attractions of escape and deeper demands of social solidarity and materialism, political cynicism and a penchant for spectatorship rather than action thwarting idealistic reforms. We were stuck in a rut as we are now, but being conscious of many great societal problems, being aware of the issues that plague us, but feeling helpless. I tell this story because our friends at the turn of the 20th century got out of the rut. We're still alive 100 years later. And I want to know how they did it. So let's turn to them. Those in the late 1800s were complacent for a while, but that complacency quickly turned to dissatisfaction, and that dissatisfaction quickly turned to a collective sense of crisis, and that sense of crisis quickly turned to them getting to work, and work they did. And instead of rolling back all the changes that had happened in the country, as some had argued, some today still argue that, oh, just roll back, we'll be much better. Women get back to the kitchens. Let's go back to the 1950s when everything was happy. But they didn't do that. They fought the people that rolled back. They said, but they didn't waste time criticizing the people that rolled back. How many times have you spent time talking about how annoying the Tea Party is, or some reverend in Kansas is, and haven't spent time fixing our problems? They didn't do that. They got to work, finding and shaping the new tools for cultivating community and alleviating social ills and making government better in the alien soil of the new industrial society. Jane Addams thought young idealistic college grads needed first-hand direct contact with the poor they professed to fight for, and started the settlement house movement for such middle-class activists to live and work among the urban poor. In 1909, there was a Chicago publisher, W.G. Boyce, who decided every American needed to, like he had, have childhood experiences in the outdoors. And when he was inspired by a young London youth scout who had helped him when he was lost in England, he came back to America and incorporated the Boy Scouts of America. In 1872, Methodist minister John Hale Vincent began to train Sunday school teachers in an outdoor summer school format. Everyone loved it and eventually snowballed into a more secular, broadened-out Chautauqua movement, where they started a nationwide series of extension schools, study groups, educational family summer camps, and 10 lecture circuits on a variety of issues in hundreds of places around the country. Think of it as the Freedom Rides teach-in, except with a big rural tent, lectures from William Jennings Bryan, a big band music, and attended by 1 in 11 of every Americans at its peak. And the same things had happened in farm communities with the Farmers' Alliance, and the same things had happened in black communities with the NAACP. In fact, did I mention that between 1870 and 1920, half of all mass membership organizations in the entirety of the United States citizens were created, not by the government, not by market, but citizens deciding to create them. We have a 221-year history, and the half of all major associations were made in that 50-year period. Weird ones you've never heard of before, like, for example, the Red Cross, the NAACP, the Knights of Columbus, the Rotary Club, the PTA, the NRA, the VFW, the ACLU, the 4-H, the Sons of Norway, the Lions Club, the Sierra Club, the American Bar Association, even the KKK. I did say all of them were good, but they were making kids. The Audubon Society, the League of Women Voters, and most college fraternities and sororities. Might I mention, in that same period, we saw the creation of the secret ballot, the presidential primary, American kindergarten, the direct election of senators, the 8-hour workday, parks, playgrounds on those parks, the national park system, and of course Mother's Day. All happened by citizens. So what did we have back then? How did we get out of the rut? We had an unprecedented era of civic creativity. We were all working on something. We were all excited. We weren't waiting around for the next election for our problems to be solved by politicians. We were working together to solve them ourselves right now. We were all looking at the world through the civic lens of what can be changed, what can I create and insert into this great public sphere to make it better. So what's the dream for us now? Let's get our civic mojo back. And this is not raise your voice. This is not get out to vote civic mojo. That's the least of it. We desperately need a new era of civic inventiveness. So to begin, we need to define this work of civic creativity. Each of these things, the Boy Scouts, microfinance, a library, the St. Patrick's Day Parade, bicycle sharing co-ops, Pell Grants, are all civic creations. We need to begin to see that civic creations texture our world. That everything that exists in society today is not because it's the natural flow of society, it's because someone decided to think something up and insert it into the world. And once we see the world as plastic, and that it's textured, movable, changeable, adaptable, subtractable quilt, then the question we have to ask ourselves is what creations, what new institutions, laws, holidays, parades, events, utilizations of existing institutions, ways of talking, organizations, government programs, foundation-funded programs, websites, uses of public space, are we going to create to solve the great problems of our time? What can we think up to solve homelessness? What can we imagine to solve public health issues? What can we create to solve urban squalor? The oppression of the past took the form of a cage upon us that we had to overthrow. Perhaps the oppression of today is better represented by us being stuck in a dark well. And what is needed is not a struggle to overthrow something pressing down on us, but rather what is needed is for us to shed light on what this well is that we're stuck in, and two, start a great, rigorous, multifaceted construction project to build the stairs and the ladders and the ropes that get us all out of this well. What is this craft of civic creation? I call it the art of civic engineering, not civil engineering, civic engineering, and challenge us all to be civic engineers. What does this mean? It means we need to take on an engineer's problem-solving perspective. If there was a road and it had to be cut off by a river, an engineer does not say, like so many of us do in the world, darn it, I guess that's life, that's the natural thing of things. No, they built a bridge, and they look at it as a challenge, a puzzle, not something to be debated, not something to have, why do we talk about debate all the time? It's crazy. Engineers don't debate each other, they brainstorm and talk about how to make things that work. When they design that bridge and someone finds a fault in it, oh yeah, it won't work because the wind will knock it down, or how will boats get under it? They don't say, oh, you're right, let's stop discussing this and cancel the problem. And they don't say, oh yeah, I see your point. Moving on. Like we do with so many issues. Or, we have different opinions on things. I guess we'll agree to disagree. No. Instead, they take those as puzzles and challenges to continue to be discussed and addressed and turned into more ideas. But so many great civic ideas are shut down so early. One, because listeners take these ideas instead of as challenges or puzzles. Instead, they take them as up or down things to have opinions on. Oh, I like that. Oh, I don't like that. Oh, it's going to work. Oh, it's not going to work. And two, because they don't have the problem-solving confidence that engineers do. What if when the idea of America was proposed, one of my favorite civic innovations, America, no one said, oh, wait. What if someone stood up and said, oh, wait, how are we going to decide how to allocate representatives among these states? This is a horrible idea. Never mind. Let's go back to British rule. What if that happened? No, they bucked up and acted like civic engineers and came up with a way to make it work, like we need to. What else is good about thinking like civic engineers? It makes us see this task as a craft, an art with skills and strategies that can be improved upon. Perhaps one way of organizing people works in a variety of civic creations, and that could be called a good civic engineering tool. For example, at a wide range of events, I've noticed that free food makes more people come. In a lot of organizations, having shared songs and symbols is a good way to keep up group solidarity and make them work harder. These are good civic engineering strategies, just like iron-fortified triangles are good physical engineering strategies. If we develop this craft over the next decade, who knows? You might be hearing some kids say, I majored in civic engineering in the applied sociology department. So, and then coming towards the end, so I'm blabbering on as usual. So the dream is a nation of civic creators and a public world that is something that is exciting, creative, exuberant, and on fire, that channels our desire to live big, unique, and purposeful lives, where we're all experimenting, testing, brainstorming, proposing, a world where your civic creation projects become part of your identity. Hi, my name's Janet. I work at the bank, and on the weekends I work on a water runoff civic creation working group. Hi, my name's Bob. I work at Starbucks, but on the side, me and a couple of friends are working on a civic creation working group to combat homelessness. I call this centerpiece of civic creativity crowdsourcing America. Crowdsourcing, for those of you who don't know, is a term that originated with internet theory, which is the idea of outsourcing tasks that are traditionally performed by an elite employee or contractor to an undefined large group of people or community, also known as a crowd, through an open call. Think about Wikipedia, no central editor, but rather a platform that allows people to participate in making it a great encyclopedia together. Crowdsourcing America would be outsourcing the task of making America a more perfect union, away from a select group of elite government workers or a select group of elite businessmen, and towards the entire citizenry. Oh, that's just direct democracy, Peter. No, unidentified voice. Direct democracy emphasizes crowds making decisions. A democracy of civic creators would ask citizens to go beyond making decisions, but rather to put in the work for the entire process of change. More Wikipedia than a referendum. A crowdsourced America would be an open platform for everyone to create our public worlds, not just make collective decisions about it. So how do we get there? We need an infrastructure for civic creation. An infrastructure is an apparatus that allows us to go about our day smoothly. So a civic infrastructure is an educational, conversational, and institutional apparatus that allows us to create more easily and rapidly. An educational infrastructure is first, our secondary schools need to make civic innovation a part of the curriculum. How about in addition to AP government? Who took AP government? I like to call AP government AP, how to be a passive spectatorial non-citizen while masking your lack of true civic purpose by bubbling in the correct memorization of the difference between Marbury versus Madison and McCulloch versus Maryland at the end of the year exam. That's what I call AP government. How about instead of that, we have community problem-solving courses where students and teams work to civically innovate in different areas of their local community democracy and school. Instead of community service, we're obsessed with community service. What about community civic creation? Let's identify the differences between these two. In community service, when you're cleaning up a park, you clean up the park and go home and feel good about yourself. In community creation, you go to the park, you interview people that litter, you take note on a graph where the trash is being put, you interview people about how they see trash cans, you learn about design and design a new trash can, you lobby the government to place a trash can in the areas where there was an accumulation of trash, and no one has to clean up the park again. So how about that? Conversational. We need to have a culture where we're comfortable talking about civic ideas. A lot of times when people talk about ideas, people are like, wow, you're weird. But we need to feel safe proposing, disagreeing, making suggestions, working issues out. We need to be less ideological about it. And less, I like this, I don't like this, and more, I can see that there's a challenge here in this aspect and a negative ramification here. You're going to need to address them. I'll help you address them. We need to start with supporting confidence and exploring ideas. You don't have to support every idea, but support the pursuit of every idea. And finally, institutional. Festivals and lecture series in every town at the start of the year to share ideas about civic creations. Local web platforms to share and discuss neighbors' ideas. A national idea sharing network, and finally a working group movement and culture, which normalizes the process of starting up a civic working group, proposing a mission statement, getting people behind you and meeting up to work out new ideas. Perhaps our revolution, perhaps the epic movement of our time will not resemble us marching millions strong in Washington or facing off against a water hose. Rather, it might resemble millions of groups of 6 or 7 people, each taking on their own civic problems and putting forth their own civic creations, and the great problems of our time give way to death by 1,000 civic creations. If we're able to do this, what will happen? 1, we'll have a lot more solutions for more people. 2, we'll get out of this political rut. Our relations to great public institutions are problems to be solved on, not issues to have an opinion on. It widens our role of what the public is. Hate politics? That shouldn't exclude you from being able to be an active citizen. It's not about laws and elections anymore. It's about parks and festivals and streets and websites and initiatives and town squares and ideas. In an era of civic creativity, public officials matter much less than us all public unofficials. 3, we get reconnected to our collective self-government, to the public interest. In an era of civic creativity, we're brought closer into our collective self-government, to our community, to our public. We have a stake in it because we created it. 4 of 7. Getting close to the end. We have a publicly interested channel for the individualist ambitions inside of each of us. No matter how much we love workers of the world to unite and solidarity forever, we also, in life, want to assert ourselves as individuals with creative original ideas. But the only channel today for creative original ideas are the arts and business entrepreneurship. This allows us to free creativity to be used to address public problems. Politics will be seen as less of an arena where we subsume our passions to the collective will. In turn, we would see the individuality of politics again. The politics is the working of great men and women on great ideas that change the world. A democracy of civic creation, there is room for civic heroes again. Individual greatness in the service of the public interest. 5, it gives us a starting point for personal action. And there's a third way between revolution and reform. Have an imagination of what the revolution is, but don't burn down the whole boat. Just start replacing planks on the boat with new creations that resemble your utopian world. 6, we have a new birth of freedom. If we see freedom not just as liberty, the space to do whatever one wants, but rather a deeper sense of freedom. Freedom is the ability of ourselves and our communities to affect the forces that govern our lives. And if that's what we believe freedom is, we're not free now. We're not free if the current state of our neighborhoods are their destiny. We're not free if the current status of our schools are their destiny. We're not free if the current status of our government is its destiny. What is our nation's freedom if it's not our ability to affect our collective destiny? If we truly want to be buried in our graves before we be a slave, we need to either bury ourselves in our graves or need to get serious about rekindling the spirit of creating things that can change the direction of our world. 7, finally, civic creativity is a dream of our relationships to each other as fellow members of this nation. In an era of civic creation where we see America as a great collective project that we're all working on, adding to, when you look at a stranger on the street and one asks you, who is he to you? Who is she to you? You say, he is not my competition. He is not a vote I need. He is not a consumer of my products. He is not a barrier on my path to success. He is not nothing to me. No, he is my partner, my teammate in the great task ahead of us of building our common future. And that's the dream of a new era of civic creativity.
All right.